Welcome back to another episode of Autodidactica, or as we're calling it this week, Autodifactica, because we just pigged out at a vegan restaurant. And that is with me, Glenn Clark, and him, Matt Paul.
Welcome.
Yeah. Oh, welcome to you too. So yeah, we're vegan pigs.
More particularly, this guy is.
Yeah, pretty much. I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, I'm going to call you out for the whole world. Do you have your sticker?
I do. I triple doubled. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'm holding up the sticker that says I triple doubled. I guess I should explain that.
Yeah. If you don't, I will. Own up to your sins.
Oh, go for it. I like hearing my sins described by others.
Well, this monster of a man decided he was going to get the triple double.
I prefer God of a man, but go
on. And that is the topic for tonight, by the way.
God, not triple doubles.
Yes,
unless exactly. God is a triple double.
Or a monster or a god.
Right.
Yeah, we'll find out. But no, this god monster god of a person named Glenn Clark decided he was going to eat the triple double at the Spiral Diner, which is a double cheeseburger with 3 buns, except the bottom bun, top bun, and middle bun are all entire grilled cheese sandwiches.
It was ridiculous. It's like one of those, like on Scooby-Doo, when Shaggy and Scooby run off to go make a sandwich and it's like 30 feet tall. like zoink, Scoob, I'm so hungry.
And
okay, Raggy, where's your sandwich? That's what we were doing. I was in pure
disgust the whole time I'm sitting across from this man.
And by disgust, he means awe.
It was a lot of awe. As I am sitting there eating a breakfast burrito smothered in country gravy, which is also kind of an unsightly thing to behold.
And a euphemism for sex, depending on what you're up to.
Depending on what state you're from.
Right.
For all of our interstate listeners out there. But yeah, so this is Autodidactica.
Autodidactica. Because we're going to die fat from being vegan beasts.
Mm-hmm. I'm vegan for the health.
Right. We don't really do a good job of that most of the time. The health part.
No, not so much.
Getting there though.
Yeah. The animals don't care.
Right, they don't care. They're fine. They're fine if we Autodidactica tonight.
Yeah.
They're like, better Thumbs you up. Than me.
Hooves up, exactly.
And it was did we say a Spiral Diner was the restaurant?
Shout out.
Here in Dallas. Is that a chain or is that just local?
They have 3 now.
Oh, okay.
They've got 1 in Dallas, 1 in Fort Worth, and then 1 in Denton.
Okay, so DFW area.
Yeah, Dallas is the original. Fort Worth was second. Denton is the newest one, I believe, is the order. The Denton one looks really cool. It's got like a 50s retro vibe to it.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Without all the racism.
I like that. I like without the racism.
The best part.
Yeah, I was never a big fan of the 1950s. I mean, I wasn't there myself, but I watched their reruns that they transmitted into our time.
Yeah.
I found them repressive, And they were very white, very, I don't know, just very
white and trite.
Yeah, very cookie cutter family kind of thing. Like everybody dresses the same and all the guys have short hair, and I don't know, wear sweater vests to school for some reason. I don't know.
There's too many Johns.
Yeah, everybody's named John, and all the girls are named Martha. I don't.
Yeah. As reflected in DC Comics.
Right. Right. Which that probably all actually goes back to the 30s or 40s, but close enough to the 50s. I don't know when they decided Batman's mom's name was Martha. But yeah, 1950s sucked.
Yeah.
Except for like, no, 1950s sucked, but I'd still go to the Spiral Diner in Denton.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Despite the decor.
Yeah.
Maybe we should cancel.
Maybe we should cancel what? You glitched.
Maybe we should cancel them.
Oh yeah, let's cancel them for being too
over their choice of
1950s.
decor. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's another episode.
Yeah,
Stay
I guess
tuned.
so. Oh yeah, we are doing. Yeah, okay. You're right. This episode, we're talking about God. How did you like that smooth segue?
Yeah.
Another smooth segue. Your segues are always actually smooth, and mine are like, and now we're gonna talk about God. We're done. Enough.
Yeah, I'm
chit
just
chats.
I'm waiting. I'm ready and willing to pounce on a segue.
Now I'm picturing you on one of those little vehicles, those little
Thank you.
mall
I'm
cop
always on
segways.
pins and needles before I say segue because I'm like, is that the right word? Is that the little mall cop scooter or not? Like,
yep, it's the right word. It's the right word.
Segue.
Segue right into
now
God.
Spell segue. I can't spell segue. Anyway, yeah, God.
All right, God.
I'm wearing a special T-shirt for this episode.
Oh, right. Can you stand up for the YouTube folks?
Yeah. Okay.
Religion makes me gag. Yes. It's a very naughty shirt.
Yeah, don't buy this one.
Very naughty boy. So it's a well-chosen shirt. So God is not such a simple, straightforward topic. As it turns out, God is vast and unfathomable. If God exists. But we're not here to discuss whether or not God exists unless we just kind of do.
We tend to do that.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to talk about what we're going to talk about. We don't know. It's not like we plan these things, except we kind of do, sort of. But yeah, God, there are so many ways to look at the idea of God. And I guess that's more what I would like to get into is the concept of God or a supreme being. And you and I both were born into the Methodist faith, Christian, Methodist, which is, the way I look at it, religion is like a language for discussing the great mystery. And I guess that's my first language, I guess, is Christianity. So when we talk about God in terms of what is it, just calling God, like that's his name. It's kind of like naming your dog. But, that kind of comes from my Christian background. God is named God. He is male and a capital H, he, even though that doesn't really
looks like Santa Claus.
Looks like Santa Claus or Gandalf. Like, I don't know. Dumbledore. Yeah, pretty much like the long bearded Zeus kind of figure, really. Like, I had a book when I was a little kid about Noah's Ark. And I always from childhood have pictured God looking like the way they drew Noah in that book, where he just had this blue tunic and this long white beard. I don't know, just stuck in my head. But But in reality, I don't think it's like God looks like one thing. Um, but I've been chattering a bit. So let's ask a simple, easy question. Matthew Paul, tell me all
Yes,
your thoughts
I'm
on
here.
God.
Okay, all right. Buckle up, kiddos. So like Glenn said, I was also raised in the Methodist Church. Um, don't remember much of the younger years. All I remember is that I was coerced into going to this place with a bunch of old people by promise of donuts in the morning.
Oh yes, the donut
And
promise. They don't
yeah,
talk enough about
that's
the
how I was
promise of donuts that corrupts children.
that's how I was lured into the church. Every Sunday morning, my
Indoctrination.
parents would wake me up and be like, "It's time for donuts. Put on your little shirt with your clip-on tie and let's go." And I was like, "I will clip on a tie every day for you if you take me to get donuts." And so I did. And the old people were kind of nice. They smelled a little funny. And then when I went to the big place with the cushiony seats, they had these short little pencils with these cool little pieces of paper inside the back of each of the little cool cushion seats. I could
Mhm.
draw all over them with the
Yes.
little cool little pencils. And then I kept being told to stand up and sit down, and I was like, "Make up your mind." Um, and then they'd pass around this little plate that had money in it, and I kept trying to take the money out of the plate because I thought that's what I thought, we were just passing around a cool plate with money in it.
Hmm.
And they had these little pipe cleaners that I didn't realize that that's what they were for. I did not realize that pipe cleaners literally meant that these were used for cleaning pipes.
Right.
Because to me, they were just things to make little stick figures out of and
Hmm.
have fun during church.
Yeah.
But then I started to get older and I started to wonder, what's all this God business about?
And what does he have to do with my
Um,
donuts and pipe cleaners?
yeah, exactly. I started to veer away from the donuts. And, well, because eventually, some may find this hard to believe, but eventually I started to get tired of donuts,
Uh-huh.
and so I was like, "What am I doing here? Maybe I should start trying to figure that one out."
Hmm.
And I started to realize that some of the people around me were pretty cool.
Hmm.
I kind of liked going to church because I kind of liked the people around me.
Hmm.
And then I became a part of the youth program eventually, and I found more people that were like-minded and just kids that wanted to have fun, young teens. And then we
Hmm.
started to do cool stuff like helping people,
Right.
and I was like, this feels pretty good, this is cool. And then but every now and then I'd hear that thing again where it's like, let's give praise to God and all this. I'm like, nobody has really like gotten through to me on that yet.
Hmm.
And so for most of my teen years, when I started to think about God and stuff, I couldn't really wrap my mind around a white bearded supreme being man that was like dictating everything in my life
Hmm.
and all of that. And so, but I just kept on trucking. I was like, as long as I keep on like being a cool dude and helping people, this institution seems pretty cool. But then that's whenever like all the hot topics of today started coming into my view as a young lad,
Hmm.
and all of the church's stances on it. And so that's when my definition of God started to become a little more defined as well as skewed as well.
Uh-huh.
But that was from my own perspective in my own church. I rambled on there a little bit, so I guess it's your turn to
No,
ramble
that was
on.
fine. That was fine. I like, and the
That was my
listeners,
background of God. Yeah.
yeah, and people may not know this, but that's actually where we met, was at that church. And when we got to know each other, I was your youth minister. I was running the youth program at that church, and you were a youth. And
Yeah.
I was what, 19, 17, running a youth program. I'm kidding. I was a very young, eternal 27-year-old, as I still am. Turned 27 many times. Hey, if God can do it. We're all made in God's image according to the Christian background that we're speaking from. um but like what we're talking about now is one kind type of view of God, which is theistic, religious, mythological. Like God has a name and a personality, and if you get out of our own background, there are other viewpoints that think differently of God, but it's still in that category of religious, theistic, mythological, a person almost who's watching over us but happens to have infinite power, and infinite presence. um and so I think that's how most people think about God. They think about a character of God.
I think most Christians, at least Christians and people
Mhm.
who under the Abrahamic religions, at the very
Yeah,
least,
yeah, true. But and
the
there's
God of
argument.
Israel.
Yeah, God of Abraham. And there's, it's split and splintered in so many directions, to the point that, people who speak one religious language, like Christians, I know a lot of Christians who think Muslims are worshiping a totally different God. They call him Allah. I'm like, no, but it's the same guy. It's the same character. It's
Yeah,
the same universe, the same continuity.
the
Um,
same extended universe.
right. Same comic book company. Like,
Just
I
wait till
don't.
Disney buys it.
Right, Disney buys God. That's a headline we'll
Jeez.
probably live to see.
Oh, erases the old continuity.
Right, they just chuck it like,
Right.
all right, here's what's
Yeah.
canon now, which is actually um in the, I want to say, the 4th century AD, CE. I prefer CE. It's more accurate. Common era. But yeah, they had a convocation of all these bishops who got together to basically decide what they believed. They decided what the canon was, because there was a lot more scripture. It was like the Star Wars expanded universe from days of old that Disney chucked. This council um chucked a ton of scriptures, and we're like, nope, just these books, these are the canon. um oh, where was I going with that though? Because yeah, there's a lot of disagreement with people who should be, they're talking about the same basic God and story, but there are also a lot of different deities on this, that are worshipped on this planet, that aren't quote unquote God, but it's the same thing. A supreme being. Like, is there a multi-armed blue dude who's just like dreaming, and if he wakes up, the universe ends? um
Right.
it's like there are many ideas about this personified God. um and I don't want to like get ahead of myself, because I want to look at some different ways of defining God, and that's really the first one. So you want to like chew on that. Like, what are your thoughts about God the cartoon character, in a way? If that's might be, I'm not good at not being offensive. But
Right.
God the corporate icon, God the character from stories,
Right.
who
The
is a,
Republican God.
right, well, not necessarily even Republican God, like, but
That's a whole different
Republic,
one.
yeah, that's a
Yeah.
whole topic unto itself. But the Republican God does fall into this. It's
That's
the
another. That's
character
another
of
definition of
God.
God. For clarity's sake, none of the things we wrote down in our little planning session for the names of these episodes are the legitimate names for the episodes, but we
Right.
wrote down defining God. And that's such a
Yeah.
fun little thing to ponder, just the idea of
Hmm.
defining God, because you can define it through your own perspective, through the perspective of another, through the
Hmm.
perspective of a group of people, from the perspective of a nation, from the perspective of a denomination of each individual religion.
Hmm.
Like, Protestant God has so many denominations underneath it. Like, there's Catholic
Right.
God, and
Hundreds.
there's hundreds of denominations of Protestant.
Yeah.
And then, and I'm not, I know a decent amount about Methodism.
Hmm. Right,
That's
because
how I was raised.
that's your native language when discussing the great mystery is
Right. And
Methodist
so,
teachings.
but I know very, very little about other denominations. I haven't,
Hmm.
because I was like, if I grew tired of my own, I'm very doubtful that I will, another will appeal to me.
Hmm.
Because the thing that drove me away from the organized church, at the very least, like, I don't fear Christians, I fear groups of Christians.
Hmm.
and because the thing that drove me away from it all was people. like
Hmm.
like when you get into the background of, you know like, when a group of people is scary whenever they start to get together and start talking, and
Right.
start sharing their misbeliefs,
Hmm.
and growing them, and their misconceptions, and their fear mongering. And
Hmm.
uh hence why you've got so many churches that are against just basic human uh traits, whether it
Yeah,
be,
like
homosexuality,
mhm.
or that's been the one that's been mostly in the spotlight for the past ever,
Right.
since the 20th century at least. And because there's a lot of, homosexuality has been around since man has been around,
Right. Yeah.
but the church started attacking it in full force,
Hmm.
uh, uh, not too terribly quickly, but at least in my lifetime, it's been a very hot topic.
Right. Yeah,
The
it has. I mean, I think it's become more of a hot topic because of LGBTQ people gaining ground in the fight for just basic human rights.
visibility.
Yeah, so they're
Yeah.
more visible. So it's the people who are opposed to those people having rights become louder, and it becomes more of a heated thing. But because like back in the 1950s, there were gay people. There have always been LGBTQ people.
Yeah.
But in the 1950s, the the heteronormative lifestyle was the only accepted lifestyle socially. And it would have been scary to be out of the closet back then. Like, and that's kind of that's what people want now. Those particular religious people who think God hates gay people want everybody to go back into the closet so they can be comfortable, which brings me to the idea of it said that God created humans in God's image. But if you look at what you're talking about, like all the denominations just under the umbrella of Protestantism, um, there are literally hundreds of denominations. Um, and so to me, I think, like the religion you choose, it says much more about you than it says about God. Like, because we'll take that hot topic of LGBTQ issues, since you already brought it up, and just use that as an example. So, like, if you love and accept your LGBTQ brothers and sisters, and you don't think they go to hell. You know, gay people, you know, people under the rainbow umbrella, you know, they're not bad people. You know, they don't threaten children in any way. So you're going to choose a church, a denomination that embraces diversity. But if you are a bigot, you're going to choose a denomination that condemns it. And you're both going to say that you love, like, if you accept them, you're going to say you go to this church because this is where God is. God loves gay people, and this church represents that. But if you hate it, you're still going to be saying, no, God is on our side. God hates gay people. I'm not a bigot. This is my faith. Your faith is false. Like, it's a, so, you're saying that you're defining God. These religions define and speak for God, but there's so much diversity in just the teachings of each denomination that it, I would say, objectively says more about the followers than it says about the deity whom they claim to be following.
Right. Because they both claim to be following the same one, the Father of Jesus.
Exactly. But they can't. They cannot be following the same God.
Right. Logically speaking, that is true.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're doing here, defining God.
Right.
I think, and I definitely agree. I think God can only be defined on an individual basis.
Right.
And so whenever, like, groups of religious people have always creeped me out. I told you back when I was a teen and we were at church camps and we would go to worship and we're all singing praises and kids had their arms raised to the sky and all this, and people were crying, and I was just utterly creeped out. And as a 15-year-old, and I am just, and maybe it's just because I wasn't part of a clique that did stuff like that, but like after like hearing what these kids had to say all day long and like seeing them and how they acted in their daily routines, a lot of them were not living very godly lives.
Right.
From what I heard on the street and in the background, and they come in
by their own
church,
definition of a godly life.
Right, by their own, but then they have it was just so audacious to me for them to then come in here and then shed tears over these like over embellished white people Christian songs. Like,
right.
It was like, I was like, that guy just outright said that he would like drown his child if he came out to be gay. And now he's in here about eternal love and stuff like that. I was like, that guy's a goddamn liar.
Right.
No pun intended, but.
And like what you're talking about, like people crying and all of that, and the singing, like that to me is where it does get dangerous. Because I think our camp experiences were largely the more accepting kind. There were some churches who would come in and they were the very close-minded churches, even within one denomination. That's a valid point to bring up, that even within a denomination, there's split thinking between churches. But I mean, what gets scary to me, it's like a mob mentality is what it is. Like they're one way when they're by themselves, but then when they're in the group,
that's basically the picture I've been painting.
Right, exactly. And it could go horribly wrong. Like it could go, everyone is having a mountaintop experience. There are tears. There's a connection, a feeling, a genuine feeling of connection to a higher power, which I would argue that the people in those situations are feeling a genuine experience. Like they feel something profound. Whether it is the presence of God or not isn't what I'm arguing. It's that their feelings are very genuine. But the same goes for Westboro Baptist Church. You know, they're not
Right.
going up on the hilltop at Camp Bridgeport and singing songs and crying at the sunset and praising God. They're picketing funerals. They're saying, they're throwing out gay slurs. They're
All gays go to
they're
hell.
right. They're a hate group.
Yeah, what was their URL? Their URL was like literally,
it was godhatesfags.com.
that's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah. This brand, this shirt brand, they have a t-shirt that they sell that just plainly says fuck the Westboro Baptist Church. And it is one of their highest grossing items. When Hurricane Harvey hit Houston and decimated the lives of many, and Joel Osteen closed the doors to his mega church and wouldn't allow refugees into his church. This brand sold shirts that said fuck Joel Osteen, raised about 40 grand and donated it to relief for Hurricane Harvey.
Awesome.
And this is all from a satanic clothing company.
Right.
And so I wanted to touch a little bit on what you said about the mob mentality. And when and this may even be considered an argument, maybe our first argument on Autodidactica. No, I'm just kidding. Because one of the things that if they're feeling, I liked what you said about feeling a genuine connection. Because you can get caught up in that pretty easily when you're young and impressionable. And that's what it was like for a lot of those kids. I feel like it was almost like an overtaking of a drug is what it seemed like for some of them. There was you could get caught up in that mentality and feel a connection with those around you. But then they'd snap out of it as soon as the lights come on and the music stops.
Right. The high would go away.
The high would go away.
And they'd become sober again.
They become sober again and back to being shitty people.
Right.
And that's what I feel like a lot of, people who have defined God for themselves, and their definition of God stops at the doors of the church. And so they, there's that one, I'm no Bible expert, but there's that one scripture that talks about the church is wherever one or two or more of my followers,
where two or more are gathered in my name,
right,
I'm with them. Something, I'm paraphrasing, but it's yeah.
And so I feel like a lot of people feel that way. They're only religious in front of another person when somebody's watching. And so that seems to hold true because everybody wants to talk about how religious they are or showboat their religiousness, their how devout they are whenever somebody's watching. So two or more people are gathered, and so they got to prove how religious they are.
Right. Which, and in the case of Christianity, Jesus, which I always feel like I need to point out, that's not the way you really pronounce his name. But, Jesus said that he advised people to pray in a closet and don't show off like those bastards over there who are just, look at me, look how good and pious I am, listen to me pray. He didn't like that. He was like, go pray in a closet. But yeah, they get together and need to show off, almost one up each other on who's a better Christian, who can say Jesus the most, who can pray the most. I don't know,
who can
bugs.
cry the most,
Yeah, who can
who,
cry
who
the
can
most?
who can give the most in donations to the church.
Right. That
Um,
was one that turned my stomach
yeah,
when people would brag about how much they gave, or the preacher would bring a rich guy up to the front of the church to brag about the amount that he gave. And I'm like,
and
he's
then he would, and
rich.
then and then the preacher would give some story about how, like, because he did that, the very next week my son was cured of cancer.
Oh, right.
And like, it's just like, that very well may be true.
Uh-huh.
I'm not really, what was it last week? You know, didn't he get cured of cancer last week? How much cancer does this kid have, apparently? Um, yeah, that's what turned my dad off. He's like, I started feeling bad every time I went to the church on every Sunday, and this guy's trying to
Mm.
shake me dry.
Right. Right. They're trying to guilt you into giving them more money. Like, you're going to compete with a guy who makes millions of dollars a year. It's like, you
Right.
can't, that's ridiculous. But I mean,
10%, like,
yeah,
10% is a
10% of
lot
your
of money. I
income.
don't care how much you make.
Mm-hmm.
And when you make even less, that 10% hurts even more.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, there's an illustration of that again in the Gospels, in the Christian
Mm-hmm.
scriptures, of Jesus again saying, this woman who gave her last coin gave more than all of you.
Right.
But they ignore that when it's the
Time to
season of
tithe.
the year when
Yeah.
it's like, we need money. They're like, look how much rich Daddy Warbucks gave to the church. Y'all should give that much too. Like, no, you're an idiot. But anyway, I don't
Yeah.
know. That I hated. I can't remember what they called that time of the year when but it's not relevant. Um but yeah, so like the thing is, though, back to the mob mindset, is that it can either make the mob do really good things when they're together as a group, like mission work, like you said earlier, helping people. I feel like our youth stuff was a lot on that side of things. um but it could also, you could be a good person when you're by yourself, but then when you go to your bigot church, you're in that mob mindset and you too are a bigot for Jesus. There's a quote, and I don't remember who said it or how it was said, so that's me owning my ignorance before I butcher this, but I will paraphrase. It's something like, without religion, or without God, we'll just stick to God. God is the topic, not religion, but we're talking about religion in terms of God. But without God, good people do good things and bad people do bad things. With God, with religion, only with religion will a good person do bad things and think that they're doing good things.
Mm-hmm.
Like, to that extent, like, well, it's a good person does evil things, I think. um I have to look up that quote because I hate to throw a quote out and not really know the words, but that is the gist of it. Just like, without religion, good people do good things, bad people do bad things. With religion, bad people do bad things, good people do good things, but good people can also do bad things because they
Believing they're
think
good.
God wants them to. And they think, if God wants me to do this, it's not bad. If God wants me to um, picket an abortion clinic and humiliate women, then it's a good thing to do it. It's a good thing to hate LGBTQ people if God wants us to do it. Like, I have a cousin in particular who probably isn't listening to this, but it's okay if he is. Like, but I think of him as one of those people that he's all on this kick about God does not love everyone. That's false Christianity. That's you're being taught the wrong things just so you have permission to sin. um and I always think, the story, uh I think some people, they found a woman cheating on her husband with a guy. Guy didn't get in trouble, but they were going to stone her to death, throw rocks at her till she was dead, because that was the law. If you're an adulterer, you get hit with rocks until you're dead. And Jesus stopped it, and he was all, let he who is without sin cast the first stone. And they all dropped their stones and walked away. My cousin would drop his stone so he could go get a bigger one, since no one else was going to throw rocks at this whore. And it's because he thinks that's what God wants him to do.
You go get a gun.
Yeah,
go
I'm gonna
2,000
go
years
get
in
my
the future and go
Glock.
get a gun.
Right. He's like, I understand what you're trying to tell me, Jesus. It's all up to me to murder
this is a test.
woman. Yeah. And so, I mean, I think,
faith.
Yeah, so it's all about how you personally interpret the stories that you're told about the divine.
Right. And I didn't need any of that mumbo jumbo growing up.
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, that old lady needs her house painted.
Right.
So
you do good things because they're good things, because you want to help people.
I don't need the bread and the grape juice. Like, I don't need to hear these 1,000-year-old, like, some of them are fun. Like, that's a good fable. Like, he let he who is without sin cast the first stone. That's a good fable.
Yeah, they're good morality tales.
Yeah, and and teens around my age were like dumbfounded with the thought that here's this guy who, like, because I was like pretty open about, I was on the fence about there being some sort of supreme being, just couldn't get behind it, could never get behind it. It just seemed too big, too mysterious, and too like blind faith for me to ever get behind it. But like I always told everybody, I was like, you know what I can get behind? Helping people out. That's pretty cool. Like, it doesn't, you don't have to tell me twice. Like, if we're gonna get a group of strapping young folk together to go throw up some shacks for people to get a roof over their head, or if we're gonna get, if we're gonna distribute necessities to the homeless, and if we're gonna do this and that to just help people out, then I was all for it. Let's put our resources towards that stuff rather than building mega churches.
Right, for real. But then you have people who are the mega church mindset people. Like our pastor really wanted our church to be a mega church or shut down and go away.
Right. Go big or go home.
Yeah, pretty much. And that was never my
I went home
focus. Right. We both went home.
Yeah.
And eventually, like, it just and the other thing in this whole arena of theistic, religious, mythological views of God is theism itself. Theism, it can be fun, like if you speak the language to discuss the great mystery in terms of theology. But I feel like it's kind of like people talking about a fandom. It's like who would win in a fight between Darth Vader and Darth Maul. Yeah. Or what did you say?
Goku and Superman.
Right, Goku and Superman. They're fictional characters, so whoever the writer decides is going to win, that's who's going to win. And I feel like that's what we're discussing, or a role-playing game. Like, it's kind of like people they argue and bicker about the rules of the role-playing game, and they think that everyone is obligated to play this game. Like, that's the people who don't believe in the separation of church and state. They want everyone to play their role-playing game. So theology, the biggest problem to me with theology, it's the ology, it's like it's a science. Like, it's not. The whole thing about the great mystery is that no one knows anything about we can't, like, religion is always trying to put the concept of a supreme being in an easily definable, contained little box, as though any preacher can tell you everything about God or anything about what happens after we die. No one knows. It's like my maternal grandfather was always saying, like, when people would die, he always said, well, now he knows what the preacher's been a guessing about. I love that quote from my grandfather because he's right.
Knows what he's guessing about.
Yeah, now he knows what the preacher's been a guessing about. So I mean, I just
in terms of the title of our thing, defining God, it's just like people have been doing that since before the Abrahamic God was even written about.
Right.
And so when we talk about theism, there are gods that we don't know the names of because they are so ancient.
Right.
Before writing happened. And the first, I was doing a little bit of research, round of applause.
Good job.
Autodidactica, doing a little bit of research on these topics we're just about. Because I was wondering, who was the first God?
Mm-hmm.
In terms of defining God, who was the first to define God? And it was the Sumerians, big surprise.
Right. They're the first that we know of because they were the first to write things down. Yeah.
And that's what I was getting at is but we know that humans have basically been theistic animals for as long as we have developed communication and language, and probably even still before that. We have believed in the great spirit above, and not to get all aliens, but aliens. But different topic. I think we've said that about 4 episodes by now.
Yes.
We like aliens here at Autodidactica.
Yeah, we got a lot to talk about. Aliens, fascinating.
But yeah, it's just like, this new telescope. That's the hot topic this week. This new space telescope that replaced the Hubble. Did you ever get around to looking at images?
I have not. It's been a week. Yeah, it's been a very busy week.
The James Webb Telescope, and you look at the side-by-sides of what we saw with the Hubble versus the same vantages with the James Webb Telescope. Stunning. And we've talked about defining God before as, I think maybe one of your all-time favorite definitions of God could be summarized as the infinite.
Yes.
And this new telescope is pretty glorifying of the infinite expanse.
Right.
And like, it just makes you feel so small. And does the Christian God, go that far? And most Christians will tell you, yes, it does. It's unfathomable, just like God is.
Yeah, unfathomable. But here are all the rules, and here's what God can do and won't do, and
attach all these rules to it.
Right.
And is God strong enough to make a stone that he cannot lift?
Right. Right.
And the old school
paradox.
Yeah. And
yeah, I love that. Can God create a scenario that God cannot get out of? Can a God create a problem that God cannot solve?
He made man, and that was his first mistake right there. That quote from Jurassic Park. God creates dinosaurs. God kills dinosaurs. God creates man. Man kills God. Woman kills man. Woman inherits the earth.
Or was it? I think it was man creates dinosaurs. Dinosaurs eat man. Woman inherits the earth. Yeah.
There we go. Yeah, thank you. Great series of logic gates.
Yeah. It's fun.
Defining God. Yeah, so I
Yeah.
was looking up the oldest god, and uh, the Sumerian god was like their first writings of. I don't know. I didn't do too much digging. I don't know if the
Hmm.
Sumerians were polytheistic or
They
monotheistic.
were polytheistic. They had
Um,
gods, a
they had
pantheon.
gods.
Hmm.
Okay, and that was
And
like
goddesses. It
16.
was, oh, what?
Yeah, it was like 1600 BC
Hmm.
is the first writings of the Sumerian gods, and the first writings of the Abrahamic God were like 500
Hmm.
BC,
Yeah.
and
Which is
now
evident if you read the scriptures. It's evident that these things were written long after the events, because they'll say things like, and this is how it was there and still today, and the
right,
book, like the book of Genesis itself spans centuries.
right, no, and a lot of it was it was all hearsay, like folk tales passed down. That's why there's two creation stories,
Right.
and
Right.
then the Great Flood. That was
Hmm.
whenever the Tigris and Euphrates flooded,
Hmm.
and there was this massive flood. It
Hmm.
wasn't as the Tigris and Euphrates rivers were not as um, predictable as the Nile, and
Right.
they would flood and rage. And I guess one year they had a really bad rain, and then
Hmm.
that story was passed down through generations, and then
Right.
was eventually written about and solidified by in 400
Hmm.
CE by that uh, convening that you talked about.
Right. Well, I mean, I guess it was, yeah, that's when they decided it was canon. But um yeah, but I mean, the flood myths in general, like there are flood myths all over the world,
All
but
over
there
the
were
world.
floods all over the world. And the
Right.
question is, did the world flood as in the globe that the people in the book of Genesis were not aware of? Or did the world flood as in the world that they knew flooded?
Yes.
Because they objectively, the writers of Genesis were telling us there was a flat earth, because that's what they describe in one of those two creation stories that's in the book of Genesis, one of those two contradictory creation stories. I mean, and that's another thing altogether, like the veracity of those stories, like what your religion tells you. Like, Jesus didn't believe in a literal um Adam and Eve, because that wasn't taught as actual, like as though it were historical fact until very recently. Like, I want to say the mid 20th century, maybe it was the 19th century, when people started saying you have to believe that Adam and Eve were real and the flood happened and all that. um because the Jews never thought that. That was
It's
never
a
a big
story.
deal. Yeah, it's a story that illustrates a point. The fact that there are two contradictory creation stories at the beginning of the Pentateuch, the first five books of the Bible, it's, to me, that's a message. It's that here's one way that God might have created the universe. Here's another way God might have created the universe. They're not here for you to try to reconcile them. The message is God created the universe. We don't know how God created the universe. We don't know what order God created the universe. We don't know what the time scale was. But here are some ideas of what that
Right.
might have looked like. And that in itself is saying we do not know. We don't know what God was up to before we existed. We don't know what God's up to now. All we do is
Right.
speculate. We have ideas, we tell stories.
We wait for the Messiah to come and tell us straight from his mouth,
Right,
and
right.
then we shit all over what he said.
Right, and completely go against it. But like getting
and then
away,
kill him.
right. Like a lot of these Christians today, they can't see it in themselves, but they would be the
kill
very
Christ.
people in the Gospels who were like, crucify him. Like Jesus is everything these people today hate.
Right.
He was a liberal. He was a socialist. He was brown. Like he was, like he wasn't an American. He wasn't a Christian. He was a Jew. There was no such thing as a Christian.
Prostitutes, and tax collectors,
yes, yeah. He
homosexuals, and
he
might have even been a tad homosexual.
For all we know, like, dude.
Yeah. You telling me a dude that walked around with 12 other dudes ain't ain't
of course
getting a little touchy-feely?
He did live in a time. Oh, both. I mean, yeah, in the Roman Empire when that was a little more accepted.
They literally wore skirts.
Yeah. But also like
biggest dickus.
biggest dickus. Yes. The gospel according to Monty Python. Excellence. Yeah. No, what was I gonna say? What did you say? I was thinking a thought.
Jesus may have been a little bit on the
right.
On the
yeah, because
a little bit.
If we're defining God, like like I want to get out of the theistic thing and go to something else, but one more thought, and I'm not saying you can't contribute. We can talk for 3 hours. I mean, it's our podcast, but do you have to go to work in the morning? But I think if you go by the rules of the role-playing game of Christianity, Jesus was both fully human and fully divine. He was equally a human and God. So if he is God, and God created sex, God created male and female to find each other sexy, that means God created sexy. He knows what sexy men are. He knows what sexy women are. So when God takes human form, God knows what sexy women are, and God knows what sexy men are. Jesus was bisexual, is all I'm saying. If Jesus was God, if Jesus had a God's eye view on sexuality, pansexual, it's, to me, that's tomatoes.
Yeah.
I mean, is that one of our topics this year? Because I mean, it's all, because that, again, when you get into sexual orientation labels, is kind of like personal. You define it for yourself. It's like, what does bisexual mean to me? Someone might yell at me and say, no, that's pansexual, and I'll be like, tomato, whatever. But that's kind of the next sort of way of looking at God that I wanted to get into, is God as self. Like,
now we're talking.
Yeah, not only do we, it's not just having a personal God, it's being your personal God, basically.
So now you're talking about Satanism.
Satanism does teach that, like organized was it non-theistic? Yeah, because I'm trying to think if the theistic teaches similar things, but not really.
And the Satanic Temple are the two largest satanic entities in the United States. Pretty much everything else is just completely obscure.
Mm-hmm.
There's also like the Temple of Nines, which is like I think they're like one of the few like theistic satanic organizations. But yeah, both the Church of Satan, founded by Anton Salazar LaVey,
right,
and the Satanic Temple, which is founded by a former follower of the Church of Satan.
Mm-hmm.
They are both non-theistic and pretty much have the same belief system,
Mm-hmm.
which is just you are your own God. Seek out your own individual pursuits without harming others.
Right.
Respect each other's individual pursuits while pursuing your own.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty much it.
Yeah, be true to yourself and don't oppress other people. You don't have to make other people live according to your personal philosophies.
In fact, why would you?
Right. Why would you?
It's
I
a waste
agree.
of your time.
Uh-huh.
I was reading a question that LaVey answered once in one of his essays.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, what do I do whenever I'm trying to argue with a Christian? And he's like, why are you bothering?
Right.
I'm just like, good point.
Right.
That's an example of a good thought kill.
Mm-hmm.
Because like, why would you be arguing with someone that you don't need to be arguing with in order to continue on with your life?
Right. You're not playing the role-playing game. Why are you arguing with people who are?
Right.
Let them argue about the rules of the role-playing game.
Not that you shouldn't ponder it, because
right,
when you're talking about mob mentality, how do you argue with the Christian mob mentality that's overtaking the United States currently?
Right, exactly. I think, but it's good to be aware of it. It's good to be informed.
Right.
I think personally, I think it's good to have a religious language at your disposal to at least understand these things, like to at least understand where these people are coming from on some level,
Well, yeah,
and to be able to navigate that.
I think almost all white Americans probably have the slightest, at the very least, religious background, Christian religious background.
Yeah.
Most white Americans, I would say, probably have the least amount of religious background. And I would say the same for most all self-proclaimed Satanists.
Yeah.
Because all Satanists are self-proclaimed Satanists. And they probably all almost left their Christian religions behind, I would say.
Right. I mean, and a lot of atheists too are very knowledgeable about like I would say beyond, like, if Christians and such are not as knowledgeable, atheists are very knowledgeable about religion and the Bible, and that's why they're atheists usually.
Right, because you're constantly attacked.
Yeah, exactly.
So you have to educate yourself on what you're apparently being educated on, whenever the people that are, berating you for your choices don't know what they're talking about.
Right. Yeah,
and
they don't
so
even.
As a reasonable person, you go and look up the exact scripture that they're quoting, make your interpretations of it, view other people's interpretations of it, and then now you are fully prepared to combat that attack next time it comes at you. Because especially when you are young and nobody has thought much about it, but you have been thinking about it since you turned 13 and started to wake up to reality and form your own thoughts, and you've been thinking about God ever since then because you still go to church every day. And then now you're starting to question it, and the kids in your classroom in 8th grade can't even fathom the idea of questioning God.
Right.
And so now you're 14 and you have to come up with reasons to question God. So you start learning the Bible more than you ever wanted to whenever you were still going to church every day.
Right. And I think it's a useful tool. Like, like I'm not opposed to the Bible being taught in public schools as long as other religious texts are also taught. Like I think it would be a good thing to have a knowledge of world religions.
Yeah,
Not
those things go, and they do,
Mhm.
but they go skin deep.
Yeah, I took a class in
They
world religions in college, and it was, I was reading what it said about Christians, and I was reading what it said about Methodists in the textbooks, and I'm like, all right, being raised in those traditions, I can see how very flawed this textbook's description of those experiences is. So all the things I'm reading about these other religions have to be equally flawed. Like it's very surfacey, like you said. It's not a very deep dive.
right, and yeah, and it should be. I mean, I don't think they should teach any religions beyond surface level.
Yeah, not to the point of indoctrination.
Right,
It's
because
just
you want to talk about,
awareness. Like we teach world history.
right, and in my world
We
history class,
learn
we
the
taught
basics.
world religions, and it was the very basics. Like,
Mhm.
my world history textbook definitely did not get into Methodism or
Mhm.
baptism or any of the other. Those are the two big ones.
Mm.
What are the other ones?
I mean, there are hundreds. I
There are literal hundreds.
like
Yeah,
there are Mormons. I mean, if
Mormon
we're
is the one I know the least amount of.
okay, I mean,
Is
it's one of the most far removed from Catholicism,
Protestantism.
like,
Yeah,
and Catholicism and Protestantism. It's removed from both of those because it has a third testament, a third book
right.
of books, the Book of Mormon.
It's the
Um,
it's the white it's the white Islam.
I guess it's one way of looking at it. That's great.
We're very PC here at
Right. Oh,
Autodidactica.
totally PC. We're
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean there's so many the Lutherans. My dad
Lutheran
was
stuff.
raised in the Lutheran, or he went to Lutheran school or something, I don't know. Um or maybe church. I don't know. I have to ask my No, my dad went to regular school. It was my uncle who sent his kid to Lutheran school. But they were in the
And that
Lutheran
kid is on drugs
church.
now.
uh,
I don't know.
but
Could be. Probably is. We're all
probably, I
on
mean,
drugs.
aren't we all like everybody?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, gosh, I mean, and then the non-denominational ones are the scariest ones to me because they don't answer to anyone. They're just every
Yeah, they don't
church.
have.
It's whatever the preacher says
Yeah,
is
yeah.
what God says. Those are the creepy ones. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's not much else to say on God as self, I think.
I mean, I could talk about
Just,
it for a long time
I
because of
mean,
my intense dive into Satanism,
oh,
and then
right. Well,
quick my quick exit from it,
right. But it's,
because
like,
I feel like that's what Satanism is all about, is realizing that you're like your own god, and then quickly realizing that the main message of LaVeyan Satanism
mhm,
was to learn and then interpret and then separate.
mhm,
And so, like, that's why I always think it's so funny that people identify as satanic
right.
and then become a sheep,
Mhm,
which is like the main thing that is taught against. It's
right.
like, don't, there, I mean, I think one of the 9 satanic sins was like it's okay to follow the herd as long as it suits your goals,
Mhm. Your personal goals,
and then you leave the herd once it stops doing that.
mhm,
But I feel like so many self-proclaimed Satanists that I was like viewing while I was active in those channels were just going with the flow. And it's very
Mm-hmm.
evident on social media as well,
Mm-hmm.
is like, people that are just in it for the image, and very meek people
Mm-hmm.
that are just looking for some way to attach rebellion to their identity.
Right. Yeah. For a lot of people, it is, I think, rebellion. Um, and there's always going to be that kind of the core human need for community. We're social animals. So we're always seeking a community, and people want to feel like they're a part of something.
Right.
And so they're not necessarily in it for the philosophy. They're not in it for the values that are taught in Satanism. They're in it for the community.
Right.
So
And that's what,
they want to be sheep.
and that's what, people love about Satanism is like somebody wanted to talk about how much money Satanism, the Church of Satan, was making. I was like, yeah, that's kind of the whole idea. It's like that was their personal goal, was to make a lot of money off of people that will believe anything they say.
Right.
And they did it, and you're contributing to it by both following what they say and not simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
Because yeah, but Satanism, just because Satanism is a philosophy, and that's what not a lot of people understand.
Mm-hmm.
Non-theistic Satanism is a set of contrary philosophical ideations
Mm-hmm.
that helped me through a very rough patch in life. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like if people actually looked at it, would help out
Oh
a
yeah,
lot of people nowadays.
it's true.
Like,
There's a lot
because
of
it is
really good stuff in there.
the 11 laws of the earth.
Mm.
At one point I had them memorized,
Right.
and they were mantras that can help you through so much. Whenever you have too much on your mind, the 11 laws of the earth can really get you through some rough patches when you are thinking too much about whatever's going on in your life,
Mm-hmm.
be them relationship problems, financial problems, or that's pretty much all anybody has problems with in life, is relationships and finances.
Right.
And yeah, and I was experiencing both of them at one point in my life. And then the low energy, high realistic, optimistic Matt you see before you now is the result of the constant mantras of those laws being spoken whenever I would encounter uncomfortable situations,
Mm-hmm.
which is just, I can't recite any of them now,
Right. I'd have to look them
but
up. I
I
can
guess,
remember the gist of some things.
my favorite one was when walking in open territory, bother no one.
Mm-hmm.
And if someone is bothering you, ask them to stop. If they do not stop,
Destroy them. I know. That one's been on my mind
No,
lately. There's some people I
that's
need to
number 11. I
destroy.
know number 9 is just straight up, do not harm little children.
Right.
Like number 7 was like, do not harm animals unless
Yeah.
it is for food,
Mm-hmm.
and or self-defense or food.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but a lot of them were just a lot of like, mind your own business,
Yeah, pretty much.
go with the flow as long as it suits you,
Mm-hmm.
and don't bother people, and like, don't be afraid to cut people off.
Mm-hmm.
Like, use people as long as they're useful to you, and
Right.
like, and then whenever they stop being useful to you, stop associating with them.
Mm-hmm.
And like, that one always sounds very very manipulative to people,
Yeah.
but at its core, it's like, look for uses in people. It
Mm-hmm.
taught me to look for uses in people, and people
Mm-hmm.
that I formerly thought were useless have now, like, as I thought about it more, they now have use to me.
Mm-hmm.
And people are sugarcoating if they think that they have relationships for any other reason than the usefulnesses of those relationships.
Right. Even if the usefulness is nothing more than comfort and
Social
community.
recharging.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And
like it's
like,
useful to have a friend.
Exactly. You don't have to think about it in such bleak terms when you talk about usefulness.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, it's
those
pretty
mantras,
much,
man.
yeah, it's pretty much just be true to yourself, take care of yourself, respect others as long as they respect you. And if people don't respect you, give them the finger and move on. Pretty much. That's, don't get too bent about it. Just move on.
Yeah, no. Number one, I've got them now in front of me. You're welcome, everybody. Number one was huge to me. Do not give opinions or advice unless you are asked.
Oh yeah.
This is just straight up mind your own business.
Mm-hmm.
Do not tell your troubles to others unless you are sure they want to hear them.
Mm-hmm.
Huge. That's pretty much why I stopped posting on social media, because it's a huge ego trip a lot of the time, and you can get hooked on that.
Right.
When you post about all your troubles to everybody, and you often just ideate all over them and just keep your focus on your own troubles. And it also teaches you to really think about who wants to hear your troubles.
Right.
And when you really think about it, only those few people that come to mind are probably the only people you should be talking to about them.
Right. No, it's true. It's true. Because people will they'll cease to find you useful if all you do is whine about your problems when they don't care.
Right.
It'll just be annoying. And people, I think, who want to hear your troubles will tell you so.
And just to tie this all into the topic, this was me becoming my own God. This is the story about Matt becoming my own God, defining my God, which has become me, myself, and I. The Holy Trinity, if you will.
Oh, I like that.
I really like this one. When in another's lair, show him respect, or else do not go there.
I love that one.
Yeah, and that's how I've always carried myself, and that's kind of Southern hospitality. When you go to someone's house, be nice to them.
Southern hospitality is satanic.
Southern hospitality is satanic, because when you're in someone else's house, you be respectful to them.
Yeah,
their wishes are your command, and if you don't like it, stop going there.
Yeah, you don't have to be there. You don't have to be in their lair.
Why do you think I stopped going to my grandma's house? Because she annoyed the crap out of me, so I stopped electing to go there. Because whenever I'm there, I'm in a piss poor mood because I don't like her house rules, the way she treats me, the way she treats my family. And so I'm going to stop going there. I'm never going to say something to her. It'd be pointless to. But yeah, I love that one. Here's one for you. Number 5, don't make sexual advances.
My favorite, the mating signal. And I always think firefly butts. What's the mating signal? That's when your butt lights up and you wiggle it around for people, and they're like, "Oh, my butt's lighting up too."
And that's why I've never heard a no. No, I'm just kidding. No, but it's basically don't rape people.
Yeah,
like
pretty much.
These 10 commandments are way more commandment-y than, I don't think there's a commandment for don't rape people.
But there is the commandments we don't talk about that are right next to what we call the 10 commandments. My favorite one was don't boil a baby goat in its mother's milk, which the best part about that is that you don't make laws unless you have a problem.
Right.
So so Moses and his followers, there was a rampant problem of, why do you people keep boiling baby goats in their mother's milk? I don't know. We need to make a law against that. That's wrong, folks. Yeah, so these are much more useful, not just kind of crazy wilderness dweller laws. These are
Yeah, number 6 is
really,
don't
they
steal.
apply to your life.
That was a
Yeah, don't
commandment.
steal. So
There's a lot
Satanism
more.
and God agree.
Yeah.
Or
Well, who
Christian
would have thought?
Jewish God. Yeah.
All right,
Abrahamic God.
this one's always weird. This one gets people. Number 7, and it took me a little bit I had to read one of LeVay's like essays on it to really understand it. Acknowledge the power of magic if you have employed it successfully to obtain your desires. If you deny the power of magic after having called upon it with success, you will lose all you have obtained. That one was hard to crack.
Right. I still haven't cracked that one.
Because magic,
very interested in your thoughts.
Basically what that means is if you have successfully employed the art of persuasion, the art of meditation, the art of self-reflection, all the different forms of magic you can possibly think about to apply to real life situations where you consider something to be a miracle that you pulled that off. If you acknowledge the power of meditation and acknowledge the power of self-affirmation and acknowledge the power that you obtain from self-reflection. If you deny it, you will lose all that you have obtained. Meaning if you stop reflecting on yourself, if you stop seeking to refine yourself to be a better person, if you stop believing in the magics of the world that you've employed, then you will lose all that you have obtained.
Okay.
It's complicated.
No, I get it.
Believe in miracles, basically. And you know, yeah. And believe in, you know, because LeVay was a practitioner of magic. And when I looked up his practices of magic, basically all it came down to me was large forms of self-reflection and what my generation calls manifesting. When you manifest, you know, do not complain about anything to which you need not subject yourself. That one was huge. Getting through relationship problems, getting through financial problems. Do not complain about anything you need not subject yourself to. Other people's problems, you just hear them day in, day out. Your coworkers bitching, moaning about their little, you know, little problems that they're never going to solve. You've given them advice because they asked you for it. They didn't follow it. They keep doing that. You know, don't complain about anything you need not subject yourself to. Not my problem. And when your head is everywhere at once, I'm telling you, these 11 things, you learn them, you find which ones apply to what situations, those situations arise, you repeat to yourself the things that apply to that, and it gets you through and gets your head on straight pretty quick. Number 9, do not harm little children. Number 10, do not kill non-human animals unless you are attacked for your food. And then number 11, when walking in open territory, do not bother anyone. If someone bothers you, ask him to stop. If they do not stop, destroy them.
I've got a list. I'm going to destroy some people.
I
mean, so that pretty much.
No, I mean, that's just how I became rational. You know? Like those 11 things.
Do you think a rational mind is a godly mind? Like, in order to become your own God, you must be rational.
You have to be, because the all-powerful and insurmountable God does not exist. To me. The me I am exists. I am not all-powerful and insurmountable. And therefore I must act and think rationally, because I cannot
Well,
walk on water.
right.
I cannot. So
No.
therefore I have to be rational.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's empowering to, some people say let go and let God. It's
I
empowering.
say hail,
You say what? It glitched.
hail Satan.
Okay. Yeah, but what you're saying is hail yourself.
Right. That's what
Basically.
LaVeyan Satanists believe. Yeah.
Yeah. Um but it's empowering, I think, instead of letting go and letting God, meaning let God take care of it and you don't even think about it. It's more empowering to let go of God in some situations, in my opinion. If you're not waiting on the invisible man to solve your problems for you, then you put more energy into solving your own problems. You put more
Yeah.
responsibility on yourself, for every decision you make and all of the outcomes of those decisions. You don't lay it on God. You don't lay the blame or the accolades on God. You take them on yourself. Like if I screw up, it isn't because God wanted me to learn something. If I learn something, it's because I chose to learn something from my mistake.
Right. Before I let Jesus take the wheel, I'm going to rip the e-brake and press on the foot brake at the same time.
Right, exactly. Which, goes to that old adage, the Lord helps those who help themselves. I mean,
Right.
there are a couple different ways to look at that. Like
Why would
either,
I ever let go of the wheel?
right, exactly. Like, so either God, if you're not doing anything, God's not going to help you, or isn't it curious how God only helps people who help themselves? Like perhaps
Right.
God isn't helping you at all. You're simply helping yourself, and God's getting all the credit.
Yeah, there's a pile of cars at the base of the cliff where people let Jesus take the wheel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, seriously, because Jesus can't drive. Like, I don't think Jesus could drive a chariot.
Yeah, no, I don't
He
think
rode
he
a
could.
donkey. Jesus rode a donkey into town. He can't
He could
drive your
barely drive a
car.
pair of sandals.
Right? He could barely drive a pair of sandals. That's good. Um, okay, so one more thing I wanted to look at, and I know this is running long.
Yeah, go for it. We're on a
Okay.
2-hour episode here.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, there are podcasts that run way longer than that, and we're talking about God here, folks.
Yeah, right. This could be a multi-parted episode.
Right.
Let's do a 24-hour podcast.
That would be funny. Well, until it wasn't. Andy Warhol made a 24-hour movie. I'm so sad I can't see it. But
what are you, blind?
no, it's not like on any kind of home media or streaming service. I think it was called 4 Stars. I don't know. But anyway, back to
Yes.
God. So the other way I wanted just to look at God probably falls more in line with how I view God. Like you view God more as God is self, right? That's what I was
Typically,
hearing.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And I lean more towards, I think there is a higher consciousness. Like if we're talking about the idea of a supreme being, but remove that concept from religion and theology and mythology, remove that concept from the fictionalized or mythologized versions of the character of God, and just talk about the concept of a supreme being. Like what would that be? Like for me, like I don't like I would be so crazy to get into that right now, like every aspect of what I think.
Yeah, we'd be here for about 3 more hours.
We would. So I have talked about it at length. If you watch my YouTube channel at all and watch my I Can't Sleep videos, pretty sure I did a whole video on my ideas about the highest consciousness and reality. And that's kind of how I think of a supreme being would be the highest possible mind, and that perhaps we are all fractals of that supreme consciousness, that all of us are God in the way that, you know, all of us are each other. By that same, it's just we're two different strands of the same higher mind, if that makes sense. But everyone is basically the universe experiencing itself. And that's God, like omnipresent throughout all of time and space. Everybody's right. And everybody always tells me I sound like a, what's the word? Psychonaut, like that I'm on shrooms or something when I talk about this, but I have yet to do shrooms. I've yet to ever try that.
Dude, God is everywhere, man. We're all God, man.
Yeah. But that is how I think about it. Like,
yeah, no. And it's sort of like it's sort of like yours and mine's definition, sort of like shake hand in agreement,
they do,
and like leave each other alone. Because they're both in and of a part of each other.
Pretty much.
Like my viewpoint on the God as the self is a fractal of your point of like the God is every self.
Right. Right.
Like, and so like while I'm focusing on the individual God that resides within me, you're fixated on the infinite God that I mentioned earlier that resides within everything. And
yeah, and you know, that infinite God cannot be petty. You can't be both supreme and petty. You can't create the entire universe. And you know, that's a whole other topic. I don't really
to confuse pettiness with unrelenting and unforgiving, though. Like, because you know, the God that you mentioned is unforgiving. Children will die of cancer.
Right.
Like, that's not being petty. That is being unforgiving and relentless and constantly searching for the returning to the higher mind.
Right. I mean, but is it being unforgiving? Like, to me, unforgiving is like, oh, you didn't get baptized, little baby who died, so I'm going to throw you in eternal fire. That's petty. That's psychotic. That can't be the supreme being.
Yeah, no, but that's not the same as forgiving to me. That's more damning. Unforgiving to me is not the same as damning, because a higher being could not be capable of forgiveness nor unforgiveness.
That's true, because like, it's omnipresent. Yeah.
I contradicted myself there, but it's incapable of forgiveness, therefore it is unforgiving. And, but it's neither forgiving nor damning.
While at the same time being both.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Like, yeah, because it's like
you could dodge a car accident and it's forgiving.
Yeah, it's both good and evil. It exists in both in equal capacity. Like, it's
sleep with your sister-in-law and get shot by your brother. It's damning and forgiving.
Yeah. But you know, like the question of evil. Yeah, it is. It's perfect balance. But I mean, when it comes to the question of evil, which is, if God is good, why does evil exist? If God is good, why do children die of cancer? If God exists and is good, why doesn't God stop these things from happening?
It's more of the why doesn't. Yeah.
Right. And I think, you know, like one idea that I have, you know, like I think the cop-out answer to that question is, well, God works in mysterious ways.
Right.
Talk to the hand. Like,
yeah.
or it's a God works in mysterious ways, la 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 la. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're not gonna listen, but or it's just it was part of God's plan.
Right.
Those are the cop out answers, I think. But the way I look at it is, if there is a supreme being, an omnipresent consciousness or whatever, um experience is everything. I think like, if a child dies from cancer, and if God is self, like, okay, let's just say if, because I don't purport to believe any of these things that I do thought experiments on in my head. It's just what I turn over and what I think about. So let's say we are all fractals of a higher consciousness, like an unfathomably higher consciousness, that this is in levels that we can't even fathom, between here and there. But if that's the case, if it is the case, then it stands to reason that we choose these stories to live before we get here. And maybe if you're a child with cancer, that is an experience, a spiritual experience, if you will, that you came here to have. That there
Right.
are things you can learn about existence
Yeah.
from going through the experience of being a child who dies from cancer, or being a baby bird who gets eaten by an alligator.
You grow up
Maybe it isn't
fast
evil.
whenever you're face to face with death at the age of 7.
Right.
You think about things differently.
Mm-hmm.
You think about things faster, like, because I don't remember everything about being 7 years old. I don't remember the daily thoughts that I had. But if you're face to face with the end,
Mm-hmm.
when you're still in that stage, you still remember most of your life fairly well and in detail. And
Yeah.
you have lived your whole life by the time you, unfortunately, move on to the next plane.
Mm-hmm.
And that's such a strange thought to think about, because I don't remember being 7 other than a couple moments. And I could not pinpoint one moment where I could tell you with absolute certainty I was 7 years old when this happened, other than my 7th birthday. Like, I couldn't even tell you my 7th birthday. I don't know where my 7th birthday was held, but a 7-year-old could tell you when their 6th birthday was held.
Right.
And what they did that day, and what they've done in the days since then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so what you're saying is you live a full life, no matter how long you live.
No matter how long you live. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, when you're talking about moving on to the next spiritual plane, because we've talked about this at length before. I don't think the next one is the final evolution either.
Mm-hmm.
Returning to, there's no way to know, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't imagine dying in this plane and then moving on to the omnipotent and omnipresent collective consciousness. I think this is yet another stage.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't think you go directly from here to supreme
God.
Yeah, no, I think there are layers like that, and we couldn't even
reincarnation
count.
Too.
Yeah, it could be a combination of both.
You could be reincarnated as a 7-year-old, a person that will die of cancer at 7, and your soul has to go through that experience before you have the chance. That could be the final test. Right. Is to live a full life in 7 years.
Right.
Yeah. That was deep. Sorry. I'm gonna be thinking about that one for a couple days.
Yeah, I'm just like, I lost in my mind now.
Yeah, that's why you have to cut out so much in these videos.
I know all I cut out are our long, thoughtful pauses.
Yeah.
Like, and the longer the video, the harder it is to do. It takes a long time to edit these videos. But but yeah, I mean those are the three basic uh ways I wanted to, the three basic angles I wanted to look at this question of defining God from. Um, and I don't really have much else to say on it. It's been almost 2 hours, I think.
Yeah, just to wrap that up, it's a theistic perspective, a self perspective, and a outside of self or a collective perspective.
Collective perspective is good. Like, yeah, I mean, I had non-religion supreme being written on my piece of paper, but yeah, collective, like we are all God as one, or yeah, like you, the individual God, we are our own gods. And then there's theistic God, where here's the rule book and here's the game and how it's played, here's how you win and here's how you lose. So those are the three basic ways that I was turning this thing around and looking at it.
What is it? You just remind me of that Latin phrase, et pluribus unum.
E pluribus unum, yeah. In
Yeah.
God we trust.
No, it's one out of many, or out in Latin it literally translates to
yes.
Out of many, one.
Yeah, I was thinking in
And
God we trust because it's
self within,
often written together.
The self within many. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, I had a ring. I don't know what happened to it. I wish I could find it that had that on. It was a silver ring.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know what happened to it.
Huh. That's cool.
Yeah, out of many,
out
one.
Of many,
and
one.
Sort of,
yeah.
And yeah, that's sort of like mine and yours perspectives combined. Mm-hmm. Is the collective versus the self. Mm-hmm. And I suppose just to wrap it up, one of the things that I've always said is that, like, the God that I would believe in, the Christian God that I would believe in, mm-hmm. if I were to believe there were one, mm-hmm. would probably accept me in the end, mm-hmm. if I live the way that I intend to live. Mm-hmm. Is like, if there is some sort of judgment day and I get to the pearly gates and he's like, yeah, I see you never really believe, but if I look over your life history and your mm-hmm. deeds, looks like you did a pretty good job without me having to tell you. Mm-hmm. So come on in, there's whiskey at the bar. Like,
I like it. I like that a lot. I was going to say something, but I'm so tired.
Yeah.
And so full of fat vegan food that I can't. We should
probably wrap this one up quick before we end up sitting here for another 30 minutes.
Pretty much, because probably if I get to the point I was going to make just now, we would be talking for another hour because we're us.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a topic you can never finish talking about. That's why it's hard to wrap up. It's such a big concept that we literally we definitively know nothing about it. There are ideas, there are more ideas than you will ever hear in your lifetime out there. I think, there are as many versions of God as there are people who ponder the idea of God. Everyone has their own idea about what that means. So this is just what Matt and Glenn have to say on the matter in this brief little window of time.
Yes.
So
this was a defining God brought to you by Matt and Glenn.
Yeah. And if y'all have other ideas, leave a comment, send us an email, Autodidactica podcast at gmail.com is where you can email us if you're watching this on YouTube. You can leave a comment down below the video. If you want to stalk us, Matt's in a band. My perfect end. I almost said your old band's name.
Yeah, lots of my's and this and that and the other.
You used to be in My Pride, My Curse. Now you're in My Perfect End.
Yeah.
And me, GlennSladeClarkJr.com. You can find my books, you can find my videos, you can find this podcast there. Which, you know, maybe you don't need to do because you're already listening to it, but I'm not going to ramble anymore because I'm a very tired boy. What?
I said, thanks, Amanda.
Amanda.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, our bracelets.
Yeah, we're both wearing our bracelets.
Yeah, we're wearing our bracelets that our friend Amanda made for us.
Yeah. So if you're watching, I'm wearing it.
Yeah, thanks, Amanda. It counts as sponsorship. She makes these for money. Yeah. All right. But yeah, that's us. This is Autodidactica. We do this every 2 weeks, or I'm gonna post some of these weekly to catch up because been in the moving process. There's been a lot going on, so we haven't been getting them up like we intended to. I'm gonna catch us up. So weekly or bi-weekly. Yeah, what's our next topic?
Next time is one of my favorites, extraterrestrial life. Are they out there, and what happens when we meet?
Oh, okay.
So, so aliens.
Yeah.
Right on time with the release of the Jim Morrison telescope, or whatever the hell it was called.
Jim Morrison.
It's not Jim Morrison.
Well, that would be entertaining.
Yeah,
it'd be a kaleidoscope.
I don't know what it's called. Yeah, it'd probably be a kaleidoscope on acid.
Right. That's going to be a fun one.
That is going to be a fun one.
Yeah.
So that is next time.
Yeah, God today, aliens tomorrow, and maybe there's going to be some overlap in that conversation with this topic.
Yeah, autobiography by Matt Paul. Gods today, aliens tomorrow.
I like it. I'd read that. All right. Well, until next time, this has been Autodidactica. I have been and continue to be Glenn Clark. He has been and continues to be Matt Paul.
Matt Paul, as far as I know.
Yeah, as far as I know too. I was just guessing with that last bit. Glad you confirmed it, Matt Paul. Didn't know who else you might be.
Man of mystery.
Indeed, indeed. All right, so let us hear from you if you got something to say. And other than that, we will talk to you in the next episode.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.